Hello and welcome to another watercolour with Claudia Myatt. Today I'm going to show you how to mix colours, but we're going to use pebbles from the beach to do it and to make it more interesting and hopefully more memorable. The challenge today is to paint this little set of pebbles with using only primary colours and only 3 primary colours. So the colours I'm going to use are ultramarine blue, cadmium yellow and cadmium red. Normally when doing nature colours I would use 6 primaries, but if you're not familiar with using primary colours to mix nature colours, then it's a good idea to start with 3 and then go on to explore further. When you look at something like this, you pick these up and you ask yourself, what colour are they? How am I going to get that? And if you look for a tube of that colour in your paint box, you won't find it. And if you do, it won't have the kind of dappled variety of colours in it that you get in real things. It's much more realistic to create those colours for yourself and to use the fact that when you mix 3 primaries together, you get what is called a neutral, which is a grey, soft, dappled, browny, grey, bluey colour that's out there all the time in everything we see. So I'm going to start by mixing a puddle of each colour. I'm not going to mix them together on my palette because we want that variety, we want that little kind of variation all the time. So I'm going to start with this little orangey one, and you can see that the main colours in that are yellow and red. So I'm going to pick up some yellow and pick up some red and make a start. I can make adjustments as I go. If I think there's too much red in it, I'll just scoop up a little bit more yellow. That's better, and spread it around. A little bit of colour goes a long way when you're working this small. So I'm really working with tinted water. So that's just red and yellow at the moment, but I'm going to add a tiny touch of blue, barely touching my paintbrush into it, because there's a few dappled patches of darker colour there. And what that blue will do is it'll neutralise the other colours and make it more subtle. That will do for that. Now let's move on to this one, which has got more of a purple tint. So start with blue, scoop up some blue, scoop up a bit of red and see what happens. That's not too far, it's not too bad. Because already there was some yellow on my brush from before. I didn't clean my brush. So it's already giving me 3 colours together, and I can manipulate that to make it push it more one way or the other, more towards the blue, more towards the red. Probably needs a bit more red in there. That's better. Nice and easy to draw pebbles. You haven't got to worry about drawing skills. You can concentrate totally on the colour. Now that one there is more of a kind of bluey grey. I'll pull down a bit of blue. You can see from the palette that the colours are still fairly separate. They do tend to have a wander around and talk to each other, but it doesn't matter too much. So I'm going to do a bit of blue, a bit of red. And that needs more blue. Needs a bit more paint in it because it's a slightly darker colour, though it has got a light patch there. What this does is it trains your eye as well as your hand to find the colours you need and to know which one you need to add to get the shade you want. Eyes are very sensitive to subtleties in colour, and this is quite a delicate exercise. It's very useful for observing subtle changes of colour and being able to understand how those 3 primaries work together. Don't forget, you can always use a tissue and get a little tiny bit off if I want to lighten that side. Use cotton wool or tissue. You can be as delicate and careful as you want to be. It does repay working quite slowly and carefully, but not overworking the patches of colour. You lay the colour on and then just leave them alone, because the colours, the individual colours that you've laid in there will wander around wherever it's wet and mix. But if you overmix them, if you keep stirring up that paint, it will become a kind of homogenised blob and you'll lose all that delicacy. Let's do this one, quite a strong blue. Okay, if it's not the colour, you won't get the strength of colour straight away on some of these. You can go back and add more. Bit more red. And for that vein of lighter rock going through it, I'll leave a gap. Very kind of soothing, this kind of work, because you're not worrying too much about the drawing. You're totally free to concentrate on the colours that you're creating. See, that one isn't quite right yet, it will need another layer. If I'm working with 6 primaries, it's easy to get the colour you want straight away, but that can be confusing if you're not used to working this way. So it's quite nice to start with just 3 and see just how many varieties you can get out of the 3 primaries, and then gradually add a few more. I usually work with 6 or occasionally 7. And this one's got a lovely delicate pink tone to it, so I'm going to start with the red, very faint. That's it. By this time there's all the colours, some of each colour in my brush, so it's already, none of these colours are coming out too bright. If I suddenly now needed a bright colour, if I was suddenly now doing a flower, I'd have to wash my brush and go straight into the neat pigment, but this fact that they neutralise each other is very useful. That's it for a first layer. But you can see how you're starting the building blocks of what we're doing and how many colours there are in there that you've created just from 3. Here's a dry one. And it always dries a little paler. So now I can build on that. You're not going to need to do a lot to this because you're dealing in quite subtle things. But let's go back to this orangey one. Same colours again. What I'm going to do is reinforce it in places. Bit of red, bit of yellow, bit of blue. Don't need very much of anything, you just put tiny little touches on and ask what it needs. There we go. And when you put wet paint on top of dry paint, of course you get this quite hard dry edge, and you can, places you might want that, but generally on these subjects you don't. So all you do is you get a wet brush, not dribbling wet, just damp, and you soften those edges just with a damp brush. So you start to get places where there is still 1 layer of colour and then gradually grading into 2 layers of colour. These same techniques work well in landscape paintings, but there you've got too much to think about if you're not used to doing this. It's good to practice on simple things first, get these core techniques going. If you don't like what you've done, lift it off. Start to get a bit more depth of colour on the shadow side. Then you're starting to create this roundness. Use my fingers, there we go. Blend it in a bit. Everything you do, you will remember and store up and hopefully be able to do again. Building up your kind of vocabulary of things you can do with paint. Right, let's get some more on this one, that's quite dark. Light on that side, so I'm going to focus on this side. A bit more blue where there's less light. Again, I can take out that hard line with just a damp brush, softly stroking that edge so that it blends. There you have a round thing. Normally I would, if I was doing this for a painting, I would work a lot slower, but I don't want you to go to sleep. Right, this one needs strengthening. Plenty of blue, a little bit of red. Quite dark one, this. blue, you know? It's getting darker anyway. Right, that's enough paint on there. Again, a wet brush is coming in now, and I can just spread that paint around. In this stage I can go over the lighter rock, because it has got some colour in it. Each little subtle mark you make makes such a difference. By now the palette is starting to, still not too bad because I'm working small, but the colours are tending to interact. But that doesn't matter, as long as you're using just the three colours, you're not going to end up with anything too disastrous. Unless, of course, if you suddenly need to go to a bright colour again, then clean it up. But for these neutrals, as long as you've just got the primaries in there, you're fairly safe from it turning to sludge. Palettes turn to sludge when you introduce too many colours, when you start using tube browns, greens, greys. There's just then becomes too many colours in the mix, and it all turns to this unappealing neutral. But this is, you've got a lot more control because you haven't got an amorphous blob of mud in the middle. You've still got those separate colours just interacting. Where was I? Talking too much, should be painting. Here we go. And you can see the way this is going. I won't do too much more to that, but you can add shadows as well. Once that second layer is dry, I would then get sort of bluey grey, very faint bluey grey, and add shadows. Let's put one onto here because I can shade it as well. Once you put the shadows on, they really come to life. They sit on the page as if they're 3D, and you can no longer see them as a flat thing. It only takes a few brush strokes to bring these to life and make them look solid. Here's the one I did that's more complete. And I suggest to have a go. Let me know how you get on. Let me know if you've got any questions, and we'll do some more next time. Thanks. Bye-bye.